All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to my first live, I guess you can call it debate. Today I have Emin on the chat. Emin, tell everyone a bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm just using Emin here as my online name anyway. My real name doesn't need to be set here. I'm an Australian. I'm an Australian who lives in Sydney, who finds the trends of Australian media and government actions towards Asia kind of disturbing, as I've been noticing the trends recently of increased almost balkanization of ideologies and a colonial mindset of good and bad Asians developing over the last few years, especially in the last 3 years.
All right. Well, yes, I also am very concerned about foreign policies by Western countries towards like Asian countries and specifically. I kind of got into the topic, like I kind of got into this area of like thought when the Hong Kong protests started back in 2019, right? Before then, I didn't really care much about the politics or whatnot, but like after the Hong Kong protests started in 2019, I like discovered that there was actually a lot of discrimination going on against me and just my motherland, I guess, because I am Chinese descendant. My parents both came from China, and even though I wasn't born in China, I still care very much about it because that's where all my family is from.
Mm-hmm. Myself, to clarify, I'm not of Chinese descent. I'm Australian British. So what I say, and if what I say comes off as very Eurocentric, that's not malicious. That's just where I come from, as I am European.
Ah. Yeah, I think that like a lot of, I guess, people that live in the West, they have more of a bias that isn't really like their fault. I guess like they just grew up with like the mindset because
Exactly correct. Yes, exactly correct. Because I grew up within the EU. I grew up in the UK within the EU itself before Brexit actually finalized. Last time I was in the UK was when the Brexit vote was being happening, and I saw then the absolute racism in display in the Brexit campaign, for example. Because there was then UKIP, which now no longer exists. It was now under new leadership, but then it was under Nigel Farage, who's now I think moved on to some other far right thing. But then Nigel Farage was using immigration as a scapegoat to essentially put blame on Brussels and to try and put a victim mindset into British people. Then that Brussels will force migrate all these people into your land, destroying your land. To make sense.
yeah, I mean, even though the mindset here in Canada is a lot less, there's still some of that same kind of mindset. It's like, oh, the immigrants are going to like overtake our country, even though it's not true. I mean, I've lived in Canada my whole life. Like, I'm honestly Canadian, and I've been living here for like 18 years. And so far, I think Canada is like a lot better when it comes to that sort of stuff. Like, there's not really that much discrimination. Well, like, I faced some discrimination like once or twice these past few years, but I've never really felt, out of place here. And I guess it just comes down to I don't know, maybe just there's just more immigrants here and it makes up the majority of the country. I don't really know.
Possible. That's quite possible because in Australia, it's still very much a white-dominated area country, even to this day, because it's still to the point where if you look at the parliament and sorry, I'm just saying, if you look at the state, if you look at the federal and state governments here in Australia, they are mostly white. First Peoples don't even have a channel of where they can act within that yet officially. That was slammed down by Malcolm Turnbull, where he did a disingenuous attack against it by saying you had created a new third chamber of parliament when it wouldn't have, when it was just asking just for Indigenous voices to be recognised within Indigenous affairs, aside from tokens. And that's why we have a weird circumstance where we have now, where there's Indigenous people in like the Liberal Party, right? But the thing is, yes, they're Indigenous, but they can hardly be representative for Indigenous causes in many regards. And also you have many Indigenous talk hosts, as we have with Stan Grant in here, where Stan Grant is technically Indigenous, but he is now more in mindset that of the status quo of the federal government, where essentially cases of where you sometimes do get Indigenous representation in government or in high authorities in media, but the price to pay is for that is they don't really represent Indigenous affairs much, and they're normally puppets of someone else at that stage, that they're being used by the capitalist class as a massive propaganda tool in some regards.
Yeah, like I think you're right. Like here in North America, the like Aboriginal people or like Indigenous people, if you like to call them like that, they are also used more as oh look, we value Indigenous culture and we provide these special clubs for Indigenous peoples in school. But yeah, I mean, the heart is there, but really,
because the thing is, the prime example of that has been Chant Tonight, which is a show that was started here. Chant Tonight is hosted by Stan Grant, right?
Yeah,
it's Stan Grant, and I forgot the presenter, but it's some Chinese woman, which I don't know why she's been on there, because the show is pretty much not ideal for anyone to really learn anything from it. But the point is here, Max Grant on that show likes to talk about China and domestic Chinese affairs, right? Not recognizing that internally, Indigenous affairs isn't ideal already. So there he is on China Tonight, low-key bashing China constantly about whatever minority issue, and yet he doesn't use his voice so much to defend actual first in people's rights domestically. That's the one thing. That's a prime example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I found that a lot of people, instead of like addressing issues domestically, they like to like jump on a specific political bandwagon, which in this case currently is China. And I'm willing to bet that before it probably would have been either the Soviet Union or like Iraq or Libya back in the day. Like
before it would be, yeah, I think that's correct. Before it would have been, because around the time of the droughts, they would have blamed the Soviet Union for suppressing the kulaks probably, even though the Kulaks were making the situation a lot worse. And then after, they would have been blaming the Soviet Union for a bunch of other stuff, for stuff they didn't even do in the first place, because of minority stuff, because of the whole integration of the whole Soviet Union and how they treat and manage domestically the union itself, how it was a close union yet autonomous at the same time sort of thing, which was very alien to the West. And it's the same thing of like how China treats minorities as well. How Soviet Union and China treats minorities is alien to the West, because they didn't just force integrate them or just do blatant attacks against them. It was different forms of granting self-autonomy and regional internal power without just giving them separatism. But I said with regards to USSR, up until the point of Gorbachev and all of that revisionism bullshit, because he just reversed all of that and just invited white Russians and just fucked up the whole parade.
Yeah, like countries like the Soviet Union and China, from what I could tell, they really do like value, or like at least they really do like show off their minority group. You know, like if you look at some of those old fashioned like communist posters, like a very famous one is just like, you know, the Chinese guy holding up Mao's little red book, right? That poster. You could actually see that there's actually like drawings of like 3 different minority groups, and there's a lot of like that kind of imagery in the propaganda. Like ever since Mao, like Mao liked people to be like equal, like no matter if it was like either like if you're a Uyghur or like you're a Tibetan, he wanted like everyone to just be, you know, Chinese.
Mm-hmm. But the funny thing about this is that you know how in the West they like to preach affirmative action regarding minority rights, right?
Yeah.
I just find it ironic how they then try and destroy China when China has literally enforced affirmative action to the highest degree possible that they could feasibly do, because it's to the point where actual Han people, their cultural dress was suppressed for being shown for quite a while, and it was like, and minority dresses were never suppressed in that manner. It's like affirmative action was there. They literally are allowed to universities at lower scores. They literally have much more potential. They literally have much more free education possibilities. and then they want to claim that they're genocided and eradicated when they're getting so many more social special perks in a society manner that it's like ridiculous.
Yeah, like
in some regards, about I agree, they should be getting that stuff. I'm not saying that to disregard the action to say they shouldn't be getting it. They should be getting it because they were impoverished for so long.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. With so much like Han people, I think minorities would need a little more like extra benefits to like catch up in terms of like population. Like I know like back when my mom was in high school and she was like about to like try to get into a university, she actually got 10 points, like 10 extra points on her Gaokao. You know, Gaokao is basically just the university. Mm-hmm. Because she was actually like half Manchu. And if I actually lived in China today, I would probably get like a bit of benefit too, because I'm actually quarter of Manchurian.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like I've seen the West also try to do that, like with, for example, like such as like, for example, like universities having to have a quota or something of each like people of each ethnicity, but I mean it feels, I don't know, it just feels kind of forced to me, honestly.
If I'm being honest here, CT Key, if the West ever adopted what they've done in China or anywhere else which adopted a similar system, which is actually uplifting minority peoples, because there's too much right wing sentiment and too much right wing media, those which do it here would be guillotined by the media metaphorically, and their reputation, if they believe in and everything else, would be attacked. And that's the sad part, is that even if the West wanted to do something like that now, they couldn't. Because they'd be guillotined and attacked by the Murdoch media empire and other things, just going after them for being either social justice warriors, cultural warriors, or puppets.
Yeah. I mean, like, currently there's like, of course, there's like two big parties. Let's just say in the U.S. I don't know much about European countries or Australia, but I just like to use the U.S. as an example because it is.
Of course, that's fair. Of course, and it's understandable as in Canada. So stick to what you know. After all.
Yeah, I don't really know much about Canadian politics either. I just look at the U.S. because of the U.S.-China trade war and like just Cold War right now in general. Of course, we all know that they're the conservative, the Republican Party, and there's the Liberal Democratic Party. And I think the way they approach things is just very different. Like conservatives, they're not really like far right. I think they're more like center right, but like their views on like minorities and like people different from them are like way different from like the liberals, because the liberals, I found that they're more like pushing for a like a minorities to be treated well. But on the other hand, liberals also don't really pay attention to like stuff like, for example, the anti-Asian hate or stuff like that. Sometimes like crimes committed by minorities, but like because it doesn't really suit their agenda, they don't really pay attention to that kind of stuff. And the conservatives, on the other hand, they're just basically speaking their way. They don't like minorities, or maybe they think that minorities get too much benefits, or they're just more like vocal about their thoughts.
But but the thing is, the hypocrisy here is that the US can't claim that minorities get too many benefits because they don't. There's certain areas in the place which can claim that minorities get too many benefits, rightfully, and that won't be so much a centralized attack and more of just maybe one part of domestic policy there, which is factually correct, but it's still not opposed. It's just a thing, as I said, in some parts of the world, minorities population was diminished, impoverished, and so on, so they need more, and that's understood there. And but ultimately in the US, for the center right people say that minorities are too privileged is wrong, because the irony is the conservatives there are already, to the most part, either evangelical Christians or other things, which is also a degree of white supremacy. So then there's a huge, massive irony that some attached to a religious thing that's also mildly white supremacist in some regards, then claim minority rights have too much power when they really don't.
Yeah. Like currently, I think like minorities are one of the like the biggest factors in like splits in countries. Like usually when a country has like minorities, they either like try to forcefully integrate them, or like they try to give them benefits, or they try to do both. But like I've seen a lot of like, I don't know if this is a word, but like I like like I just call it weaponized minority. You know, like I've seen a lot of like US does a lot of color revolutions in other countries. That's pretty obvious. And something I found like very interesting is that like for a lot of these color revolutions, they always use like either minority or different group from the like the ethnicity of the current government. Like for example, remember like in Iraq, they had like their government was like they claimed that the government was like oppressing Sunnis or whatever, or like
Mm-hmm.
in Libya when they claimed that Gaddafi was like oppressing Africans, and even now they're claiming that like China is oppressing the Uyghurs and Tibetan people, and that Russia is also oppressing their Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the best ways to just like get a country like into like divided, get a country like divided, just because China has like a lot of ethnic minorities, 56 to be exact. There might actually even be more. They just don't claim so. But like, yeah, it's easy to like, if they were to get all 56 of those like ethnic minorities to like all be split up, that would actually like cause a lot of chaos in terms of like politics and like rule of law.
Domestically, if all 56 did, which is impossible because the vast majority of them don't want to at all because they are way too interconnected already with the whole Chinese nation as a whole, and they are in many regards one and the same with the Chinese nation. As that's what as that's biggest that's and as this leads into something else actually. I'm thinking that is the biggest mistake the US is making because the US is making a mistake thinking that you can go ahead and target minorities to turn against the central government. Yet the thing is, China itself has had dynasties from multiple ethnic groups, not just Han, and that's why, and that leads into something else with between an interesting thing I learned about the KMT and the CPC, which is the KMT regarding recognitions of past dynasties. The KMT only recognized the Han ones, right? The KMT recognized all of the ones that existed as existing. That means that why would they oppose this government when the CCP already acknowledged that in the past they had their own dynasties in China before? When the KMT isn't doing that stance at all, for example.
Yeah.
Because quite literally, the heritage of those dynasties isn't part share of the Chinese nation. Because they all had, to some degree, influence over one part or another in it. Dynasty within it. Good or bad, failed or successful, doesn't really matter. There was a lot of integration between minority, Han, and so on. And for example, the only reason Han became so dominant was because, for example, of like the Han reforms in the Liao dynasty. For example. And that is what stopped the ethnic tension between Mongolians in around Manchuria from breaking out into bloodshed, for example, back in the very, very early dynasty histories.
Yeah, I think like Chinese people, like they don't consider minorities to be like, oh, they're not part of us, or no, they're foreign. No, I think Chinese people all consider like all the ethnicities of China like as just Chinese. I don't think like there's a difference between like I don't think there's like people are just like, oh, I'm Han, you're Uyghur, so you're different from me. No, I don't think that's like a big case in China. I mean, China.
Correct. Yes. Yes. Correct. And that's my point I'm saying here. And that's one point I'm saying, and that's this blunder the West and a lot of the US especially is making, thinking that there's a dynamics of how it works, because that's how it worked for them with supremacy. But that's not how it worked in China for so long. For so long, it worked the opposite manner, where the ethnic division didn't really matter so much. Sure, there was sometimes a regime that favored one over the other, but normally those regimes didn't last long, and they were the shortest lived dynasties within the Chinese dynasties themselves, comparatively.
Yeah.
And then this leads into another issue, which is that what I want to talk about in the first place. That is, people also need to re-look at how well people who talk about China in general and Asia in general and stop thinking of it in such a binary manner. Because in the eyes of a anti-China person, they either see Wumaos, freedom fighters, trolls, and useful idiots. Correct?
Yes.
And also another term they might use on occasion is little pinks, and so on.
Yeah, the pinks. I don't really understand that. Like, I don't like.
If I'm honest, I don't understand little pinks very much, but I think little pinks refers to the new generation of young Chinese people who are patriotic for China, I think.
Well, yeah. No, I don't think I've heard that term before. Usually, it's just CCP troll, Wu Mao, or just
Because you and I won't get it because it only refers to Chinese people, little pinks.
Yeah, maybe it's a more common word on like Asian or like Chinese internet.
Because I noticed Serpent ZA, for example, likes to use word little pinks to target normal Chinese people, for example.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It won't apply to either of us because I'm not Chinese and you're only a quarter Manchurian.
Yes.
And so it wouldn't even apply to any of us because, one, ethnically, we wouldn't be anywhere near enough Chinese to be classified, and two, we don't live in China.
Yeah.
As seem to be those two to be called little pink by the reactionary people.
Yeah. I think it's mostly just more on the Chinese. And I don't think I've ever heard people call me little pink or like pink in general. I know like also like people call each other like strawberry on like the Chinese internet because apparently you're like too soft and too sweet or whatever.
Probably yeah. But that's ultimately there's some domestic shit which doesn't really matter really because it's this internal culture shit. But my point is that people need to understand there's the real dynamic of discourse is a lot more complex actually than that. The discourse is such a wide web actually in terms of those who talk about it. Is Wumao's a real thing? Probably yes. Probably yes. But the thing is it as big of a thing as people claim it to be? Probably no. But there's one thing which people need to understand, which I'll share my screen in a minute once I just find a thing. Because, for example, there is actually a little thing in Taiwan where they actually have their own version of Rumals actually for the DPP, which is actually kind of funny. And yeah, it's just how it works. And it's like quite literally, what they do is where literally they serve the DP's interests, good or bad. It's just quite funny in a way.
Yeah.
Give me 2 seconds. I can share that screen.
Okay.
It's just allow screen share for 2 seconds.
All
I
right.
just want to.
I've unlocked screen share.
This is what I'm about.
Yeah. Oh yes. The DPP's Wumaos. Yeah, those guys are also pretty toxic. Like I remember the time where like I think also like WHO, they didn't acknowledge like Taiwan as like a country or like didn't allow Taiwan to like enter the WHO, and then there was like a bunch of these trolls that attacked the head of the WHO, calling him the N-word or whatnot. Yeah.
So I was coughing. I didn't want the coughing to come on the recording. And ultimately, that's what I'm saying regarding paid trolls, and it's also that, and also funny enough, US trolls have been found to be a lot more aggressive and larger number also, because as you probably know, the US, for example, the US military is involved in esports, for example, as you might know.
Yeah.
And they literally use esports to influence public opinion and to recruit people into the military. And then and also on the other end, you literally have catgirl TikToks from the IDF.
It's like yeah, I've seen them.
Cringy as fuck. Where they quite literally post genocidal messages and boast about murdering people who try to invade their country while dancing cutely to a pop song. It's like,
ooh, do you want to commit mass genocide with me?
I know, right? It's like, are you retarded? Why do you put this up? But that's not the point. So Wumal is a common offense, yes. Common word, yes. But the thing is, in actual practicality, the amount of actual Wumals would be fuck all in reality. Because
Wumaos are mostly concentrated in China. I don't think that there's much Wumaos outside of China. Like,
correct,
I know that they have trolls, professional trolls, but that's inside of China. That's spreading propaganda.
Yes, correct. Yes, correct. Because the thing is, most people online either are actually foresee something happening, especially with Hong Kong. Actually, I foresee that Hong Kong might have Hong Kong patriots be the new front line. Might be one of the new front lines for defending China in the future. Because ultimately, the whole national security law stuff and the resolution and the 2019 stuff actually was a awakening for quite a few Hong Kongers.
Yeah,
because I honestly found the active interest in politics increased 2019, 2020, when the black shirts were going around harassing people, killing people, and disrupting lives. And also support for the national security law was high also then.
Yeah, like as before, there's like anyone who doesn't agree with them, they would attack, they would dox, and they would like
Exactly, correct. And honestly, in terms of those who go out far, goes far in reach to defend China, I noticed Hong Kong patriots are doing that and actually quite literally doing stuff which mainland patriots don't bother to do anymore because they are just sick and tired of it. Right? And that's the funny thing about it is that quite literally Hong Kong patriots would literally find a video, share it to all their friends and communities, and literally get a mass grouping to target it, for example.
yeah.
And it's like mainland ones don't bother doing it anymore because they don't care. They do care, but they won't really put the effort in as much as Hong Kong patriots would to target propaganda because they know the sheer amount of propaganda out there.
Like I think the mainlands are patriotic, but in this case, maybe it's because it is thanks to like more of like the CPCs. They do have like more censorship, and as a result, not much people might know about it, or they might know about it, and like you said, they don't care. Like it reminds me of another situation. I don't know if you heard about this, but like remember back when like China like banned a VTuber from like Bilibili or something like that because
that thing, yeah. That thing, yeah, because they mentioned Taiwan as a country in algorithms. Yes.
Yes, and a lot of people just automatically jumped on a bandwagon. Oh, China's sensitive, or like China is like censorship or whatnot. I think the case for that was that you know how like that VTuber was like several months attacked by like Chinese trolls afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I think the CPC was actually like banned them from Bilibili to just let things cool down because that happened like a few days after that happened. The trolls were already pretty triggered by now.
Because in that case, yes, I partly agree. I think they only got banned just to save the asses of the people, because if they stayed on there, they would be torn to shreds. And that's one thing I find about mainland patriots is that if most of the time they don't come after you, right?
Yeah, they can be fucking toxic if they do.
Most of the time they don't come after you, but if you go into their spaces and do something against them, they shred you to bits with no mercy until you die.
Yeah, they're like heat-seeking missiles. They will actually try to find you, and that's what happened with like I think she was called Kiryu Coco or whatever her channel name. She got like stalked and like harassed for like several months after that. And honestly, like I think like a lot of the hate fueled was because like you know how like the Western weeaboo community also got like involved and started like of course like bashing China, and like I've seen a couple of people actually wishing nuclear destruction on Chinese people because they wished they offended their precious VTuber, which is like I mean like yeah, I too wish death on an entire race when they like offend my anime idol, but yeah, I think.
But also on that, it's face silly. If I actually honestly don't like that side of weeaboo culture and antique culture.
I don't like weeaboo culture. Period.
I'm actually more mixed as you know, actually do know some good anime which has been quite well made, and I still like those things, on occasion. But that saying, weeaboo culture in its most extreme form, I don't like at all. I absolutely hate as you do. And that reaction of being overtly racist in weeaboo culture was fucked up. I agree, and that's where the whole thing is messy. It's want to because I used to honestly, if you like anime and anime culture, like it, but don't be a fucking Japanophile and hunt down other people without understanding the context of things, right?
Yeah. I mean that's more of a personal preference. Of course, like multiple rants I went on Discord.
Yes,
I
yes
don't.
and no.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, yes and no, and ultimately you're free to opinion on that, and that's fair enough. As I'm sure you have very good reasons for that, and I won't try and convince you otherwise. But I agree with you on this point about the response from some otakus to that Coco situation. That was fucking wrong.
yeah. I think what we learned from the situation is that, of course, there's a huge communication divide between Western and Chinese, like internet users or citizens in general. I think that's what like bloomed this tiny mistake into just a full blown war. And I think that part of the reason is because of the Chinese censorship. Part of the reason is also because, of course, we are biased to think, Chinese people are all brainwashed and they're all Wu Maos basically. Like any Chinese people that ever said anything positive about China, they are called Wu Mao, CCP shill, and whatnot.
And and the other part of what I'm of was and say was then we get into the actual nuance of it all, which is then goes into then foreigners, people who like China but are mixed on the CCP, and so on. And that is where I see them as those who support China and those who are mixed on CCP are normally of the new generation that are patriots, right? And then you get into the foreigners, and that's where the foreigners end gets really messy with people, because then you get two terms described by the anti-China crowd put to them: either mostly one, useful idiot, or two, essentially paid propagandist.
Yeah.
But they're both correct. They're both incorrect, sorry. Because some people just want peace. Some people just like to have not racism happening and people just being able to live freely without facing discrimination. Some just hate lies and misinformation. Some just hate propaganda being forced on everyone's throat that wants to promote ethnic tension and conflict. Right?
Yeah.
And I fall in the camp of essentially hating lies, hating propaganda that promotes racial tension, and I hate hypocrisy, which is why I personally do it. I'm not paid by anyone to do it.
Yeah, obviously.
I know, obviously.
I wouldn't take the money even if they offered me it. It's just not a wise thing to do. Yeah, even if they did, even if the CCP approached me saying would you say this and then we'll give you $100,000. I'm just using an example. I'm not going to give me that much, but yeah, you're not going to do it because if you do it once, they're just gonna keep asking you to do it, kind of marijuana, and then you're just gonna be a propagandist for the rest of your life because they know to go to you when they need something to be said or to be.
Yes, and that's the key distinction. A propagandist is someone that works for someone else. In that aspect, someone just his opinion just has their own opinion. There's a clear distinction between the two. Yet most people who talk about it, I find, at least online, don't seem to understand that distinction whatsoever.
Hmm.
And because most people defending China are unpaid and are just people who care about principles in 90% in probably not probably 80% of the time.
Yeah.
And that's probably that's the motivation for it as well. Because I actually have a good close friend in the mainland who I've now been talking back and forth with for 2 3 years now.
Yeah.
And I can and if you actually speak to someone who actually lives there for long enough, you'll come to understand a realization. For me, it wasn't really a realization as I have been having Chinese friends for a while. But if you came to it new, you would come to a realization that ultimately the whole facade and mask the anti-China wing likes to put up, it's really quite factually incorrect because you'll find a lot of these people you speak to are just proud of where they live, proud of what they've achieved, and proud that of what the country has come to.
Yes.
It's just pride of achievement, pride of progress, and not wanting to have that stop because they are now finally in a position where they can have prosperity in a long time.
Yeah. Because a lot of these like Chinese internet trolls are like, I want to say like my age, maybe like 2 years younger than me. They've probably personally seen China like, because the 2000s to like the 2020, this was like a very big changing point like with China. Like back then China was like, or like I know a lot of people said this before, but like personally as someone who's traveled to China for a long time and like has parents who are Chinese and like experienced China back when like Mao first died, it was like it was a shithole basically. Like yeah, it was like there were trash all over the streets were dirty, the buildings were ugly and gray, and there were like smoke all over the place because of like all the cheap labor productions. And when I first went to China, my first response is, damn, this place smells like shit. Because it used to smell like sewage right in front of my grandma's house. And like afterwards, the second time I went back to China, it still smelled a lot like shit. A lot less though. The streets were a lot more clean, but it was still kind of dirty. And the third time, I think it was like when I was like 10 to 12 years old, that's when like things started changing. I noticed that like buildings were replaced with newer ones, the streets were cleaner, there were like less people spitting on the streets, like Serpentzier likes to say, oh, Chinese people spit on the streets. That's like, I mean, overall, it just became much better. And then the fourth time is like, it was like 2016. I haven't been back to China in like 4 years, but like, damn, it changed so much. There was like modern buildings everywhere. Like all the crappy old apartments are gone. There are no more trash on the streets, and everything was clean. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And yes, as a prime example of why people do defend China now, because they see stuff that are happening, they see progress, they see that opportunity, life quality, and so on is increasing. Overall, despite issues that may remain on occasion, which some will remain because every society has some degrees of minor social issues, obviously, and it will take a little longer till they are fixed properly.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, like, I think, like, I was watching a debate by, like, I think it was Daniel Dumner the other
It's to
day.
a point where if you told if you told them in 1921, for example, the founding members of the CCP, that in 2021 it would be the second largest economy, there'd be all of this going around, and they would have more than enough armed forces to defend the nation from any attack. They would probably laugh at you, most
Oh, you're a
likely.
madman. Yeah, that was like an impossible dream back then. The people were just struggling to survive, and honestly, even back when my parents were kids, back in the 1970s, they still like, even though they lived in Beijing, so they didn't really like starve, but there was no meat. Like they had these like ration tickets where excuse me for a second, I'm gonna
Of course,
cut this part out. All right, excuse me, that was some guy pressing the doorbell and my dogs went nuts.
No issue.
Yeah, so what were we talking about before? My brain kind of got scrambled.
Oh, sure. Before I was talking about one, the nuances of actual positions. Two, people should talk to people actually living there to understand the true realities of how people feel. And three, just saying how the achievements have progressed. I was on those 3 points before.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the thing is, I find it interesting about Australia is cults also. I
Yeah.
actually find cult education here quite abysmal, right? Because they talk about religion, right? But what about cults? There's almost nothing about cults except for like specialist research, which you can actually look up. Fair enough. But it's not treated as a major national institutional thing. It's all left to the individual in most cases to find out about.
Yeah.
Which is why I find it quite fascinating. Because ultimately Australia accepts and welcomed Asian cults, right?
Yeah, Falungong.
And accepted not just mild ones, but ones which have horrible records. Stuff like Happy Science, stuff like Falungong, stuff like Eastern Lightning, stuff like that. Then it's like, why are you accepting Happy Science, Falungong, and Eastern Lightning in? Do you value your country at all, allowing those nut jobs in?
No, I think it's mostly because they have a common agenda. Like, for example, like Falun Gong, I don't know about the other cults. Are they anti-China? Like, I don't really know much about them. Are they against?
Eastern Lightning is a Chinese Christian one who thinks God should destroy the CCP.
Yes. So he's against the Chinese government, I'm guessing.
And Happy Science is a Japanese cult, which is anti-Korean, anti-Chinese, pro-Japan.
So basically, imperialist Japanese thinking.
In a way, yes.
All right, yeah. As I was saying, agenda, because I'm willing to bet that if these cults started like spreading anti-America or anti-Australia propaganda, they'd be like fucking crushed.
And anyway, talking about the Falungong, because I'm sure people know about Falungong. I actually have a funny story about the Falungong. I'm gonna look up something, and this says a lot about them. Because if you want to understand that, is screen share allowed still? Yes, it is. Good.
It is.
This thing right here.
American-born Chinese apology. So ABC.
Yep.
Like Australian broadcast.
Yes, Australian media.
So Australian media called him a cult or something.
Yes and no. They called out some practices by them, but they didn't denounce them wholly. They were trying to do a balancing game between saying China is suppressing them, but also that the Falungong is the cause of undue deaths.
I actually have a couple of stories that my dad has told me about the Falun Gong. There was actually this one like case. I think it was like back in like the 1990s. Like during no, I think it was, yeah, it was during like I forgot it was like Deng Xiaoping or Jiang Zemin when they were like chairman. Like there was this hot Falun Gong girl who like went to Tiananmen Square, and I don't know if like the square is cursed or something because like a lot of shit happens there, but like she set herself on fire to protest the CCP. Like honestly, I don't understand why would you set yourself on fire, but yeah. And afterwards, she didn't die.
CD and Key, I'm gonna show another thing I found a thing question. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes. Falun Gong is actually they're like
And if you want to know what they're pressing against this, which isn't as much of a denunciation as it should have been. There should have been a lot worse in denouncing.
okay, I have no idea what they're saying in that article, but
It's essentially doing a hit at the founder of Falun Gong and the fact that they don't care about medical stuff that much.
yeah.
Because the Falun, as you know, they're anti-science in some regards, anti-medicine in some regards, and so on.
Yeah.
And it's much like the Jehovah's Witnesses with their bullshit, with anti-science shit.
Yeah. My grandma used to have a friend that was Falun Gong, like quote unquote used to because they don't talk anymore, but like she would come visit my grandma's house and then like every time she would just like look around the room like when she enters like and then just whisper there are demons in this house and then like my grandma would just be like I mean like a normal person of course like my grandma's just like what the fuck is this crazy lady talking about and then she would go on this like the psychic sensing adventure where she would just wave her hand around, kind of like those telekinetic superheroes you see in movies, right? And she would look, and then like every time she would just say, "There are evil presence in this house. You must do this, this, this." And then my grandmas are like, "Yeah, no, okay, cool."
Sorry, give me 2 seconds.
And I think Falun Gong's like the belief is like very harmful to a lot of people. I think that's why the CPC banned it. There was also this one time they were meditating outside this park, protesting and trapping the people inside the park. So yeah, Falun Gong it's a pretty toxic cult. And speaking of Falun Gong, I actually like there's a SkyTrain station that's near a mall that's near my house. Like there's always Falun Gong people there. Well, like except yesterday. Yesterday I don't know why because it was like yeah I probably know why it was like 42 degrees. Apparently, spiritual warriors can't stand the heat. But like they were handing out these NCCP flyers, like these petitions saying like eliminate the demon CCP, Chinese Communist Party, nccp.com. and then they would show a bunch of pictures of like they show the tank man and they show stuff like that. I don't know if you have those in Australia. They hand those out everywhere.
Yes, I do. Give me 2 seconds.
You know, also originally gonna burn this for a video, but I never got the chance. I still kept it because I still want to like.
I think I still have some of the Falungong materials I stole from them.
Oh no, really? They saw me as a Chinese person, just handed it to me. It actually helped me stop the SkyTrain door from closing. Apparently, these activate the sensors. Yeah, I don't know why I do that. I do some really random shit sometimes. I just the door.
And anyway, by looks, I think I got rid of most of it, but I kept 2 things. I kept 2 or 3 things from it. I'll just show it this way.
Oh. That is, I have never seen that version before. They must hand those out in like Chinatown or whatever.
Yes, and then there's also stuff like this. And it is such good stuff as.
Oh yes, yes. They. It's always the same exact content in every one of those flyers, other than the NCCP one. Just exercising and yoga, and then you can cure breast cancer if you do like if you raise your hands and like slowly breathe every day. And a lot of people were like, don't underestimate the amount of like retarded people on this planet. There are actually a lot of just stupid retarded people, and they believe in this.
Look at this one.
And this yeah. Oh god, that's yeah. And then a lot of people believe it, and it's like, hey, my grandma has cancer. Oh, you don't need cancer. You don't need chemotherapy. You just need to meditate. And then they would also like sell these like this is what from what I heard like from my dad. It's like the Falun Gong were basically a bunch of scam artists. Like every Falun Gong group had their own like
and anyway, going the NCCP ones, yes, I saw them as well. I just burnt that one already.
yeah.
And of course, we have the notorious one.
Shen Yun, yes.
And anyway, the other thing I was going to show you was the Eastern Lightning stuff. Because Eastern Lightning stuff is actually kind of pathetic. Because they actually push out persecution movies, right?
Yeah.
I am not joking. That's
wait. Falun Gong produces movies.
no, I'm talking about Eastern Lightning here.
Oh.
Give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna find it. Then I'm gonna show you.
Yeah. They would sell chairs sat on by their master and for like hundreds of dollars and stupid.
I'm just giving the ad so it doesn't spam anything. I'm going to now share screen again. Voila.
Oh my. That is an actual movie.
And my favorite one, Red Re-Education at Home.
How do you re-educate at home? I'm pretty sure re-education is you have to be there in person.
And because if it was the prime quality of it, I'll just show you a few minutes of it. Let's give a little more.
I can't
hear
anything. I think you don't have to. Is that Pepsi? You can tell this is like westernized. No one drinks Pepsi in a Chinese drama or like a film.
And ultimately, if you want to see a prime example of what this, if you want to see how these CCP people, the dad in that case is the CCP person.
Oh wow. And what happens then?
Let me try and find a point in this movie. I do know I've seen this enough times. I know exactly the time when shit goes down.
Oh great. I might ask you, why were you watching this so many times?
This part here.
I'm guessing the dad sells her for organ money or something like that. Yeah, the volume's kind of low.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
I think that's movie. The movie the volume is quite low overall.
Yeah, just explain what's going on here.
I'm just trying to show you the terrible acting because there's an outburst later. That's
It's kind of what happens when you have low budget films made by random people.
yeah, it's low budget, right?
So is the dad
Yeah,
trying to sell the woman or something? I can't tell what's going on. If they are going to sell the woman, how much money did they get?
I don't know.
Wait, do they sell the woman?
I don't know.
So it's basically just CCP evil bullshit.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. All right, so basically the dad's a CCP agent or something like that, and they're just
No, official. CCP official.
it's the same thing to them.
True. That's enough.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's basically just CCP bad.
Yeah. Essentially, I was trying to find a part where the movie depicts him as saying, "I am a believer of the satanic Karl Marx." By
Who says that?
I don't know.
I just imagine you going on like a first date or something with a girl. It's like, I believe in the works of Karl Marx. That's pretty much how you pretty much screw up your chances if you say that on your first date. I mean, I'm not saying that like Karl Marx is bad.
I know.
Like, that's just a random thing to say.
I know. Yes, and I was saying, and if you want to know what Eastern Lightning is, that's Eastern Lightning. They produce shit like that, and that's the worst part about it. That's mild. That's just them talking. Because they love to show police brutality as well.
Yeah, like I love how these people just ignore police brutality in America, or just how like they just film the police beating up like the rioters, but they don't film the rioters throwing a Molotov cocktail just seconds before.
And ultimately, the other thing they love to rally against is the allowed religions, actually. Let's try and find that one, actually. Is game. Here we go. So yeah, for 1 second more, because we skip it then. I'm trying to find an example within their own movies of what I'm on about. I'm going to turn down until I find it.
All right.
Here we go. Found it. If you want to see a prime example, here's a prime example of other shit they do in their movies and themes.
I don't mind Christianity, but sometimes these cults can be really toxic. Wow. Okay, they're just handing out flyers. Oh. Communism, am I right?
I know, right?
It's like, no, drinking and smoking doesn't affect my child 20 years later. I feel like they purposely find the most soy boy making.
I know, right?
That actually looks like my friend's dad. So yeah, communism bad, and I don't know what happened. They just ran in with batons because communism does that. Because Karl Marx, that's the 4th chapter of okay.
That's enough. That's enough to prove that point.
Her head would have exploded if the guy stomped on her head like that.
Yep, it would have, correct. And that's what I'm saying. If you want to know what the Eastern Lightning is, there you go. That's the Eastern Lightning.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow, I wonder what the CCP did to them.
I think it's banned from proselytization. Much like every other religion is in China, because you can't preach religion, nor can you preach atheism. Also, it's like
that's not true. You can preach a religion in China, just don't be a retard and don't kill.
But ultimately, what I mean by that is by street preaching, stuff like that. Yeah, proselytization, like you see here in the West.
Eastern Lightning holds that Jesus has returned as a Chinese woman.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
And
so what they're saying is that a Jewish man sent from the heavens died, and then afterward returned as a Chinese woman.
Correct. And not only returned as a Chinese woman, but also, guess what? Made the word of the flesh, which is a extension of the Bible.
Wow. So it's like the Third Testament or something like that.
Correct. In terms of religious language, that would be the Third Testament. The First Testament being the Old Testament, Old Testament, New Testament, then be word of flesh for them.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't mind religion, but it's stuff like this, that's when I just don't want stuff like that happening.
And as for happy science is a weird one. And I'll show you.
I mean, judging from the name, yeah, I can tell. Happy science.
I'll find it for you and I'll share as well, like everything else. Don't worry. Because they have a website. They actually have a website. The Eastern Island doesn't really. They just have random ass churches and YouTube videos, so on. But Happy Sounds actually has a website. And here is website.
Wow. The water revolution. Trump shall never die.
Oh, the books! Oh, the books are. Oh, the books are comedy.
I am tempted to buy that just for the meme.
Don't. Oh, God damn it. The books are pure comedy. Books. Here we go. Let's look at the book selection.
The Xi Jinping thought is out now. Oh, Humankind.
The true heart of Yoden, guarantee for humankind suffering from the coronavirus.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure no one is suffering from coronavirus.
Inside the mind of President Biden, thoughts revealed by a spiritual guardian days before his inauguration. And let's see. Heavy science. And then there's a teaching from the founder.
Why is it called Happy Science when they don't even use science?
I don't know. And then this is the most oxymoronic part of them, the teachings.
Wow.
It is confusing.
Wisdom, self. I mean, most of these are. I mean, they're optimistic. I can say it that much, but
Optimistic, yes, but it's misguided.
Yeah. Yeah, anyways, that was just what I wanted to like talk about today. It's just overall just a bunch of random topics that
Sure, that's fine. In the future, if you want to do a more focused one, we can do that.
Yeah, we could do that next time.
Sure. Next time being when do you think then, or is that to be disclosed?
Yeah,
later?
that's to be disclosed later. I can contact you later, but for now, I think that this is time to like end. We talked about a lot of this stuff, and I think we should continue next time.
Of course.
So yeah, Emin, thanks for coming onto my channel and talking about it. It was actually a very interesting conversation I had. So thank you.
Of course. At any time, just message me.
All right. So this was my first ever debate. It was actually okay, I guess.